Imagine the busiest highway you've ever seen, maybe rush hour. Everyone's trying to get somewhere, but there's just like one lane open. That's actually a pretty good picture of what many blockchain systems feel like today. For all their amazing security and decentralization, they often hit this really frustrating bottleneck, slow transaction speeds. We're talking low transactions per second, TPS on the main chains. It's a fundamental challenge if we want mass adoption. But here's where the really ingenious solutions start coming in. Layer 2 protocols. Think of them maybe as express lanes built above that main highway. They allow for really rapid off-chain transactions, letting you basically zip along without getting stuck in the main traffic jam. And crucially, they do this while still maintaining the fundamental security of that underlying blockchain below. Sounds perfect, right? Speed, efficiency, core security. But this brings up a critical and often overlooked question. It's one that frankly, many early solutions haven't quite been very careful in the security analysis about, and that's composability. Okay, so if you're building a complex digital system where different layers and protocols need to interact smoothly, say, a layer 2 stacking with the main blockchain, or maybe other advanced apps building on top of that layer 2, can you really be confident in its overall security? Can all these pieces, reliably snap together without creating hidden problems? So our mission today is to take a deep dive into a really groundbreaking new research paper that tackles this exact question head on. It introduces what's being called a gold standard for security analysis in this space, and then, importantly, it applies it to a real-world protocol. It shines a light on what it truly takes for these off-chain solutions to be robust, to be trustworthy. We'll be pulling insights from some remarks and a detailed paper called Universally Composable Treatment of Multiparty Isomorphic State Channels from a team at the Institute of Science Tokyo, Aarhus University, and Input-Output Global IOG. Let's unpack this.
Right. The core problem, as we touched on, is that blockchains, well, by their very nature, they're designed for security and consensus above all else.
Every single transaction has to be validated, agreed upon by maybe thousands of computers across the network.
Yeah.
And that process, while it makes them incredibly resilient, incredibly trustworthy, it also makes them inherently slow. It's like having every single vote in an election counted by every single citizen. It's secure, yes. Fast, not so much.
Precisely. And that's exactly why Layer 2 protocols have become so pivotal in enhancing blockchain scalability. They effectively take the vast majority of transactions off the main blockchain or off-chain. They handle them in a more private, much higher speed environment. We're talking about things like payment channels, state channels, virtual channels. The whole idea is to just drastically cut down on that confirmation delay that's, well, unavoidable when every little thing has to be written to the main ledger. It's a bit like setting up a tab at your local coffee shop, right? You don't pay for every single coffee immediately. You just settle up at the end of the week. Layer 2 does that for blockchain digitally.
Okay, so layer 2 speeds things up, moves transactions off the main chain. Sounds like a win-win, but then we hit that crucial question again. What happens to security when these fast off-chain solutions need to connect back to the main blockchain, or even connect with other layer 2s or applications? It's not just about one piece working in isolation, is it? It's how it safely fits into the whole puzzle.
That's a really important point, and it's exactly where this idea of composable security becomes paramount. It's absolutely critical. It's about ensuring that a layer 2 protocol isn't just secure floating on its own, but that it can be safely connected with the blockchain ledger underneath it. And just as vital, can you safely build increasingly sophisticated applications on top of it, knowing that security holds up across all these interacting layers? Layer 2s often sit in this centerpiece position right between the main ledger and these complex apps. If their composable security isn't rigorously proven, the whole structure could be shaky, like building a skyscraper, as you said, on a foundation that hasn't been tested with the bedrock below.
That's a great analogy, really paints a picture. And this leads us to what the paper highlights as the gold standard in this kind of security analysis, the Universal Composability Framework, or UC. Now, for you listening, maybe you're not deep into cryptography. What does calling something the gold standard really mean here? What's the practical takeaway?
Yeah, it's a strong term, and for good reason. The UC framework defines security in a really clever way. Imagine you're watching a master illusionist. You see securities like that illusion being so perfect, so seamless, that even if the rival magician is secretly watching, trying to figure it out, they just can't tell if you're doing a real, incredibly complex trick, or if you're just using some perfectly trusted, invisible helper to make it all happen flawlessly. Technically speaking, it compares a real-world execution that's the protocol actually running, with potential attackers trying to break it against an ideal world execution. In this ideal world, there's a hypothetical, perfectly trustworthy third party that just performs the desired secure actions without any possibility of failure or cheating. Now, if an adversary, no matter how clever, simply cannot distinguish between these two scenarios, the real protocol running in the wild, or the ideal, perfectly trusted one, then the protocol is considered UC secure. And what this means practically is that the protocol remains secure in the presence of other protocols and instances of the same protocol.
Even when they're all interacting in complex, unpredictable ways. It sets a very, very high bar for security. It has to, because it accounts for these unexpected interactions.
Right. That makes sense. It's about security, not just in a vacuum, but in a busy, messy, real world. And here's where it gets really interesting, because this new paper points out a significant gap even within this supposedly gold standard framework. They say there's currently no comprehensive UC definition for isomorphic multi-party state channels, especially ones that aren't tied to a specific type of underlying ledger. Whether it's account-based like Ethereum or UTXO-based like Bitcoin, it's almost like having a universal adapter, but finding out it only fits European plugs, not US ones.
Exactly. And that's precisely why the paper's first major contribution is so critical. They propose a completely new UC-based definition, a functionality they call SCH, specifically designed for these fast isomorphic multi-party state channels. The real breakthrough here is that FCH is deliberately agnostic with respect to the ledger model. Think of it like a universal translator for what a transaction achieves, the change it makes to the state of the world, rather than focusing on how that change is recorded. It doesn't care if it's updating an account balance or spending a specific digital coin. It focuses purely on the transition of states, regardless of the technicalities of the implementation of such states. This is huge because it means their security guarantees apply just as well to Ethereum-like systems and Bitcoin-like systems using the UTXO model. It simplifies the analysis massively without losing rigor and gives developers way more flexibility.
That is a big step forward. Flexibility and broad applicability, that's key. Okay, let's switch gears slightly to another fascinating and sometimes overlooked aspect of protocol security, the role of time. We often think of digital stuff as instantaneous, but delays are real. Why is precise timing so critical in state channels? I mean, thinking about that dispute period you mentioned, if you can't react fast enough, what happens? Is it just annoying or worse?
Well, it's definitely worse than annoying. What's fascinating and slightly scary is just how intimately the security of these channel protocols depend on the notion of time, specifically on things called time locks, and the absolutely timely action of honest users. Picture that digital boxing match again. In a dispute within a state channel, honest users must timely react and present the correct state to close the channel safely. There's a deadline. If there's a delayed action, maybe your internet connection lags, maybe the network is congested, even if it's just slightly beyond that defined time lock, an attacker could potentially impose a malicious, fraudulent state, and that leads directly to financial losses for the honest party. So yeah, it's not just inconvenient, you could lose your money. Modeling this precise timing correctly within UC has always been, well, tricky, like building a perfect clock into a distributed system. And this brings us neatly to the paper's second major technical contribution, a novel and much more realistic way to model time inside the UC framework. First, they introduce a global ticker functionality, G-ticker. Think of it as a universal stopwatch that everyone in the system agrees on, explicitly tracking time's progression. But, and this is really crucial, they also define a refined global ledger functionality, which they call G-constrained ledger. Now, unlike older models that might just use one single broad delay parameter, sort of like saying the network is generally slow, this new definition gets much more granular. It has a more granular notion of delay. It understands that reading information from the blockchain might take a different amount of time than writing information to it. So it explicitly splits delays into DOR delta R for reading and DOL delta W for writing. This makes it a more realistic approach of reality because it mirrors how networks actually behave. Reading might be faster than waiting for a block confirmation to write, for instance. And this granularity, this realistic view of network delays, is absolutely crucial for payment channels because, as we said, they are so strongly dependent on timely action. If you can't read the bad state or write your good state within those realistic BOR and DO constraints, you're vulnerable.
Okay, so we've got these super robust, granular security definitions. They're ledger agnostic. They account for realistic time delays. That sounds fantastic in theory. But what does it mean for actual protocols running today? How do you take these new, more realistic security definitions and, put them to the test in the wild?
Right, theory needs practice. So to show the practical power of their framework, the authors used an existing well-known protocol called Hydra as a concrete case study. Hydra is a multi-party isomorphic state channel, meaning multiple parties can participate, and it operates in the UTXO model, the one used by Bitcoin and Cardano, for instance. Basically, Hydra lets, say, Ember parties, maybe 5 friends, maybe 50 businesses, collectively manage and modify a set of unspent transaction outputs, UTXOs, completely off-chain. Think about those friends constantly splitting bills, coffee, movies, rent, whatever, instead of every tiny payment hitting the main blockchain, which would be slow and costly. They just keep a running cab inside their Hydra channel. Fast, cheap. Only the final net settlement who owes whom what at the very end needs to touch the main ledger. This massively cuts down on-chain traffic, making it super efficient for frequent interactions. Now, Hydra was actually proven secure in the original work that introduced it, so it wasn't insecure. However, and this is the key point the new paper addresses, there was no composability analysis. Its security was essentially proven in isolation, assuming it was the only thing running. This new paper changes that. By rigorously applying their new UC framework using that universal XCH functionality and the realistic G-constrained ledger time model to Hydra, they provide a much more robust security analysis. It's not just confirming Hydra is safe on its own. It proves Hydra can operate securely within a larger, complex ecosystem, interacting with the ledger and potentially other protocols. This provides a truly robust foundation for building with Hydra and similar protocols, giving developers much greater confidence.
That's fantastic validation, both for Hydra and for their new framework. It shows it works in practice. And I understand the paper goes even further. It defines and proves the security of a specific extension to Hydra, something called Hydra with hanging transactions, or EGHT Hydra. What exactly are hanging transactions, and why is proving their security so important? What extra challenge does that solve?
Yeah. Drill down even deeper. So if we think about the flow inside a layer 2 channel, hanging transactions are basically those transactions that have been proposed, maybe broadcasted within the channel, but haven't yet been fully confirmed or included in the next agreed upon state snapshot. It's like you send an IOU to your friend within the channel app, everyone sees you sent it, but it hasn't been officially tallied into the group's current shared balance sheet just yet. It's hanging. The paper introduces something called an early finality property, specifically for this extension. And this is where it gets particularly interesting, especially because Hydra uses the UTXO model. The key insight is that in the UTXO model, unlike account models, a transaction's effect can often be considered final, or at least highly likely to be final, as soon as it is confirmed by at least one honest party. And crucially, its effect is often independent on the order in which parties confirm it. This is a subtle but really powerful benefit of UTXO for certain things. In account-based systems, if transaction A happens before B, the outcome might be totally different than if B happens before A. That makes early finality much trickier. But with UTXOs, which are like unique self-contained digital coins, once an honest participant sees a valid transaction spending a specific UTXO, its effect is pretty much locked in. That specific coin is spent, regardless of what other transactions happen around it or in what order. This means you can gain confidence about a transaction's outcome much, much earlier. To capture this formally and prove it's secure, the paper introduces FCH-HT, a specialized version of their main FCH functionality. This FCH-HT specifically models and guarantees this early finality property for Hydra when dealing with these hanging transactions. It adds another layer of speed and certainty within the channel.
Wow, okay, so let's recap. We've journeyed through this critical world of blockchain scalability, looked at the gold standard of composable security, the UC framework, and really dug into how modeling realistic time with those granular read and write delays is absolutely vital for layer 2. Then we saw how this super robust framework wasn't just theory, it was applied to strengthen the security guarantees of a real protocol, Hydra, and even define and secure its hanging transactions extension with that cool early finality property unique to UTXO. This deep dive really hammers home that composable security isn't just some academic footnote. It's fundamental for building reliable, interconnected blockchain systems we can actually trust. The ability to model real-world factors like network delays with this kind of granularity.
Yep.
That significantly boosts our confidence in these off-chain solutions. It genuinely provides that robust foundation for the next wave of blockchain innovation, stuff that maybe seemed too complex or risky before. So here's something to think about. Given these major steps forward and rigorously proving the composable security of layer 2 protocols, what kinds of new, truly complex, interconnected, decentralized applications can you now imagine being built? What kind of innovation does this newfound confidence unlock? Innovation that might have been stalled before because the security interactions were just too hard to guarantee. That's your provocative thought for today.